Car crash cases, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts. The attorneys with Josh Wright from the law firm of Hollis Wright and host David Lamb.
Good evening and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday evening. Got a panel of experts dealing with a topic that most all of us will be able to relate to or know someone who kind of has experienced something similar. Kind of the topics we always deal with, topics that matter to you. That's the case tonight, and we'd love to have you be a part of this conversation. The way you can do that all throughout the program, that info is going to be on your screen. Also, don't forget, Hollis Wright, the law firm, makes available attorneys standing by live during the course of the show tonight. So all show actual attorneys will be standing by live to speak with you. All you have to do is get in touch with them. So whether it be on the topic matter we're discussing tonight or something else, if a question pops into your head, take advantage of that opportunity to speak with them. Leading tonight's conversation from the law firm of Hollis Wright, Wright Clay. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, David. I hope you're doing well.
Doing well.
Wow, what an amazing set we have here. This is my first time on the show. We've got the new set. I'm really proud of it. It looks great.
It looks fantastic for sure. Kind of dressing things up in this new year.
Gives the show a little refresher. So
I like
happy to do that. Yeah. So definitely tonight we're covering a topic that I know in some respects everybody will be able to relate to, because we're going to be talking about wrongful death. Right. So obviously at some point in time, everybody's going to pass away. People are going to lose family members and friends that are going to pass away. But not in all instances will people pass away under circumstances where the death is the fault of somebody else.
Right.
And that's really what we're going to be talking about. We have, in a society like ours, when somebody passes away and their death was caused by somebody else, if the death was intentional, murder, something like that, it could involve criminal prosecution. Mm-hmm. But it might also, even short of intentional murder or something like that, it might also be under circumstances that are negligent, meaning that somebody did something unreasonable and that unreasonable conduct led to the death of somebody. And in those situations, you can have a civil lawsuit, and it's referred to as a wrongful death lawsuit. And that's primarily what we're going to be focusing on tonight, because in situations where somebody gets injured, those cases procedurally can kind of take the same path, whether it be in a medical malpractice context, an automobile accident, or something along those lines. But wrongful death cases have some real unique aspects, and that's really what we want to nail down on tonight. And we're very fortunate to have a good friend of mine with us here this evening, Barry Walker. He's been practicing, I won't say exactly how long, but for a long period of time. Wow. Here in Birmingham, probably around 20 years, though, I guess.
Right around that time.
All right.
Carter.
Well, we will disclose that only to emphasize to the viewers how much experience you have. I've known Barry a long time. He is a very passionate, hardworking advocate for his clients. He's done a great job over his entire legal career, and we really appreciate you being here with us and sharing your wisdom here tonight.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Have you spent your entire legal career representing individuals who have been either injured in accidents or in wrongful death type situations?
Absolutely, I have. I like to think of my firm as one of the conscious of the community, and so I've dedicated my career to representing people who've been injured or killed through no fault of their own because of someone else's negligence or an entity's negligence or bad act. So it's what I've always done.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about the wrongful death context. So obviously, if somebody's injured in an accident, the injured person would come to see you or somebody at our firm.
Right.
And if they decide to hire us, we would represent that injured individual. But a wrongful death case is different because obviously the person has passed away. So it's typically going to be a family member that's going to come see you. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's usually the next of kin. If it was the wife who passed away, the husband, the wife, or maybe the children. And what we have to do after we do an initial intake and analysis, if we go forward, is set up an estate, because that's the legal fiction, the legal entity that is required in the state of Alabama, so that you can file a lawsuit on behalf of someone who was killed, and you're bringing that wrongful death claim.
And in terms of the investigation, I would think that a wrongful death case is a little bit challenging because, again, in an injured person context, you can rely upon the injured individual to provide you with information. But a lot of times the family members who come to see you, they may not know exactly what happened that led to the death. Talk a little bit about those challenges in an investigation.
Great question. Absolutely. In the context of my practice, a lot of these cases present themselves in a hospital where someone has died in the hospital and the family suspects that a mistake was made and information is being withheld. So what we have to do after we set up that estate is procure the medical records, have them reviewed. Oftentimes we'll get a forensic pathologist, which is a medical expert who focuses on the cause of the death. So you have to take a lot of time looking at those medical records, enlisting the aid of experts, similarly situated experts to the ones that treated that person in the hospital to make sure that they the provider adhered to the standard of care and acted like a reasonably similarly situated physician or nurse or pharmacist should have if that person was not to die.
Now, you talked about an estate. How do you go about setting up an estate, and what court system do you go through?
Probate court here in Jefferson County is where you would go to set up the estate. And as you know, that's a requirement. If someone has died and you are considering filing a lawsuit, you need an administrator to act on behalf of that estate. And that's how we would do it. So I don't know all the procedural hurdles to go through because someone else in the office does that, but I know it's a requirement.
But all the counties have probate courts, so it's
Absolutely.
really where the person dies. You
Right.
would typically set the estate up in the county probate court where they passed away.
Absolutely, because you typically bring the lawsuit either where that person was a resident or where the death occurred, where the accident that occurred killed them.
And I think we're about to go to break in a minute. We'll talk specifically about the steps that have to be taken and who can be appointed to serve in that representative capacity.
Great.
We'll pick up right there. That's a good point for us to take our first break of the evening. As we do so, a reminder, Hollis Wright all over social media. Check them out, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, a great educational and informational resource. Again, all you have to do, just search Hollis Wright. If you'll just search Hollis Wright, you'll find it there, and it's just a great way to keep up with what's going on. It's time for us to step aside. We're coming right back. More of the attorneys coming up right here, so stay with us, everybody.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm. Thank you for watching The Attorneys. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury-related topics, you can call, email, or text us. Or you can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or simply contact us by going to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us watching The Attorneys. It's common for a potential client to ask, there are many great firms out there. What separates Hollis Wright from other law firms? My response is generally to talk about the strengths of our law firm in handling cases throughout Alabama and the United States. That we've recovered through verdicts and settlements, hundreds of millions of dollars for our clients. That we have financial resources to hire any required expert and to take their case all the way to trial, even if it costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars to do so. That we settle cases for top dollar before trial is needed because the insurance companies and defendants know we have the ability to take a case all the way to trial. That we handle cases only on a contingency fee, which means we never ask the client to pay any costs of litigation whatsoever and only recover those costs in a fee if we win for the client. That we have a staff of more than 20 employees that help us litigate cases from start to finish. That we've had a television show on NBC 13 for 6 years that answers thousands of questions to citizens for free each year. But what I've learned in the last 20 years as a trial lawyer is that clients want more and deserve more than all those things. Those things are expected of each law firm they consider. So with that wisdom, what I tell clients now is simply this. We are a family-oriented practice at Hollis Wright, just like their own family. that we are a team-oriented group that engages in team-building exercises and team-building events because it helps our clients win cases, that we are dads and moms and brothers and sisters, that we are former Alabama trial lawyer presidents, that we return every single telephone call from every single client, that our bedside manner is second to none. So what really separates our firm from others? We're balanced and well-rounded, and as such, we relate to people not just as lawyers, but as compassionate human beings. Human beings that know what it's like to face a day in court. We are advocates, we are compassionate, we are tireless. We are, simply put, Hollis Wright.
Welcome back into the Attorneys. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll be back with Barry and Carter talking about wrongful death in just a moment. But real quick, I want to emphasize once again, attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by live throughout the program tonight. That's a free, confidential, all-fair conversation. All you have to do is pick up the phone and give them a call. Carter?
Yeah, Barry, when we took a break, we were talking about the obvious need to get an estate set up in a probate court somewhere in a county probate court throughout the state of Alabama where the person passed away. But obviously the estate has to have a representative.
Correct.
And so how do you go about who serves as the representative, and is there a priority or hierarchy of individuals that are eligible to serve?
Absolutely. Pursuant to our intestate laws, or whether someone had a will may be a deciding factor, but like I said, typically it's the next of kin, a husband or the children. And I encourage them to choose whoever is qualified to act as the person who will be the administrator. The law requires that they be a citizen of the state of Alabama, and there are also some other requirements in terms of them qualifying to be the administrator of the estate.
Yeah, I think there's one of the disqualifiers is you can't be a felon, can't have a felony conviction.
That's correct.
And you have to have a certain credit rating. Credit can be a disqualifier because I think you have to get a bond as part of setting up the estate, correct?
That is absolutely correct, Carter.
All right, and then also with respect to the spouse, if the spouse cannot serve, I think the largest creditor in the state of Alabama can serve, and some of the counties like Jefferson County has a county administrator that could potentially serve as well.
Absolutely. We have a county administrator here in Jefferson County, and oftentimes when there is no one to act as an administrator, they could actually be the administrator instead of a family member and carry on the lawsuit.
And one of the points you made a minute ago that I think is important is if the individual that passed away had a will, then that will typically will appoint a representative, what we call an executor or an executrix, to serve as the representative, and they would be the ones that would have priority.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct.
All right, and so you get the estate set up. What is the typical time frame getting an estate set up? Can it be pretty quickly?
Well, it depends on the case and how quickly you have to move it along, but typically I think you can get an estate set up in 30 days, no more than 60.
All right, and then once the estate's set up, you can then, I guess, have the estate representative has the authority. They are now the decision maker. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. That's the legal fiction, and they're standing in the place of the person who died, and they will be a named party in that wrongful death lawsuit against the defendant who allegedly caused the wrongful death of the person they're representing.
And you mentioned a minute ago, do you have to get an estate set up in order to be able to get medical records, say, for instance?
Absolutely you do. There are a few instances where a provider may give records without an estate being set up, but typically after someone has died, an estate is required in order for you to procure medical records.
All right. You get the medical records, you look at the medical records, you investigate the accident, you otherwise deem it to be a viable claim. Do you then move forward filing the lawsuit?
Yes, after you've done a whole lot of investigating, because we have to do our due diligence, as you well know, and the estate is set up, you go ahead and file that lawsuit naming the personal representative as the plaintiff and prepare to fight the good fight.
And I know we've kind of been talking about this in the context of a medical malpractice case or a nursing home case, but obviously the procedural steps that we just went through would apply to any type of wrongful death matter, whether it be in a car accident, a truck accident, a work-related accident, those types of things.
Absolutely, because wrongful death could occur in any context, whether, like you said, an automobile accident, boating accident. If someone died through the negligence of someone else or another entity, then that estate is certainly a requirement.
Now, what about in the context of a deceased minor child? Do you have to have an estate be set up for a minor child, or can a parent bring a wrongful death action on behalf of a minor child?
Well, you're about to exhaust my knowledge of probate law, but I think a parent could bring that as next kin of the child.
Yeah, I think it says custodial parent.
Custodial
you don't have to
parent,
get an
that's
estate
correct,
set up.
right.
To my understanding, it's one of the exceptions that we have is that if it's a minor child, the legal custodial parent can bring the claim on behalf of the minor child.
Absolutely, that's my understanding as well.
All right, what are the damages in Alabama that you can get from a wrongful death case?
Alabama, I think, is the only state in the nation where wrongful death is entirely punitive. In other states, by comparison, you can collect for loss of earnings, future earnings, loss of companionship of a husband, wife, and child. But in Alabama, it is strictly punitive. And I think one of the good reasons for that is because no life is any more valuable than another. So if Bill Gates happened to die as compared to a janitor here in Alabama, you wouldn't have to weigh their relative wealth or lack of wealth in deciding the merits of the case and awarding compensation to the estate for that person's death.
All right. And actually, who gets, if you're successful and you pursue a claim, where does the money actually flow?
Well, the money actually flows to the heirs. So without getting too much into intestacy, for instance, if it were a husband who died, then the wife would collect the money. If there were siblings, and one of the siblings was the administrator, the proceeds would typically be divided evenly between all the siblings, although it's my understanding that the law allows the administrator, even if they aren't a relative, to collect part of the compensation as well now.
Yeah. Dave, do we have a quick question from a viewer?
Really quickly, want to know about statute of limitations.
Okay. Well, the statute of limitations, as Carter well knows, is the deadline by which a person has to file suit or they forever lose their right to bring the lawsuit.
And what is it in Alabama?
In Alabama, it's 2 years from the date of the death.
2 years from the date of death. All right, let us step aside right there. We're going to take our final break of the evening. We'll pick up right here whenever we get back. A whole entire segment of the attorneys remaining. So I'll tell you what, here's what we're going to do. We're going to step aside, take a quick break. As we do so, opportunity for you to pick up the phone and be a part of this conversation. All the info you need is right there on your screen. One more segment to do that. We'll be right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright. In court, attorneys are not allowed to tell juries certain things. For example, we cannot talk about a defendant's net worth, meaning the defendant's ability, resources, or insurance to pay a verdict. In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, why can't lawyers talk about a defendant's net worth to a jury? Now, Rule 403 of the Alabama Rules of Evidence states, in part, relevant evidence may be excluded if its probative value is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice. Long-standing Alabama cases have held that the net worth of a defendant falls under this catch-all rule and is to be excluded. The reasoning behind the rule is that if a jury knows a defendant is wealthy, then the jury might award more money to the plaintiff. And this goes one step further. If an attorney makes any remarks that suggest the defendant is responsible because he is wealthy or rich and the plaintiff is poor, that can be grounds for a new trial. If you're ever on a jury, the reality in our state is this. In almost every lawsuit that goes to trial, the attorneys representing both the plaintiff and the defendant have already looked at whether there's sufficient insurance coverage or assets to satisfy a verdict. Most likely, the parties would not pursue a civil lawsuit if damages could not be paid after a jury returns a verdict. So even though lawyers cannot mention the net worth of a defendant during trial, there likely are resources available to pay a verdict in court. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorney is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. And remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. And as always, thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on WVTN 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. The clock is ticking. This show is almost in the books. You've got about 7-8 minutes to take advantage of the opportunity to speak with the attorneys from Hollis Wright. Live attorneys standing by to speak with you, so don't miss that opportunity. Carter?
Yeah, Barry, when we took a break, we were talking about the distribution of any wrongful death proceeds that are generated. And I know for me personally, that is a very tricky and nerve-wracking experience because sometimes there are multiple heirs that stand to receive a certain portion of the money, and to a large extent sometimes you're having to rely upon the representations of the family members in terms of brothers and sisters and things like that. What steps do you take in your practice to ensure that the distribution of the proceeds gets into the right hands, and have you found that to be sort of a difficult experience?
Carter, as you and I both know, that could be a very, very sticky situation, because if there are siblings out there who have not been identified, or if there is an estranged spouse, husband, for example, who hasn't been around or been with the family of their kids for 15 years, but is not divorced from a deceased wife, and we're successful in getting compensation for that family, he could conceivably come as the next of kin and take all those proceeds and not share them with the kids. So we do a lot of due diligence.
Yeah, and we've actually, in my practice, I've seen that firsthand.
We all have.
Where a lady passed away, husband had basically abandoned the family 20 plus years ago, but they never legally got a divorce. The adult children bring the lawsuit on behalf of their deceased mother. Money comes in, and it's kind of like time out. We've discovered that your mom never got a divorce from the husband, and he wound up getting the money. And there have been some claims over the years about saying, well, it's against public policy, he abandoned the family, but I've never seen that play out to the favor of the family members who are making that challenge. And so you do have to be particularly careful and cautious. And the other thing too, and tell me if I'm wrong, but if you've got adult siblings that are supposed to get money, if one adult sibling has passed away but has left their children, don't those children take his share?
That's a great point. You're absolutely right. They stand in the steps of that deceased parent. So
it can get, the point is that the distribution can get very complicated, and a lawyer really has to do his due diligence to make sure the money is getting into the right hands.
You're absolutely right.
Now I wanted to come back to something you talked about a minute ago, and that is the damages in Alabama being for punitive damages. Punitive implies punishment. We're going to punish somebody for wrongdoing. Well, people are just going to make mistakes. That's human nature. And I think generally people think of punitive damages as being awarded in situations where somebody does something really wrong, like drinking and driving, or something along those lines, or intentionally defrauding somebody. Is it your understanding you can actually get punitive damages for a simple negligence case in a wrongful death context?
It is the law in Alabama that whether it be by negligence or punitive actions, you can only recover punitive damages in a wrongful death case. So you are absolutely right. It could just be mere negligence, but our statute says that all damages in wrongful death cases are punitive.
And the principle behind the punitive damages is to preserve human life. We're not getting into Bill Gates versus the janitor at the school, and to also attempt to deter people from making those types of mistakes.
Question we've got here: how do attorneys bill or charge for their time if they are representing someone in a case like this?
We represent our clients, lawyers like Carter and I, on a contingency fee basis, which means we try and choose our cases very carefully, but we take all the risk, we fund the case, and if we don't prevail and win that case or settle it at the end of the day, then our clients don't owe us anything. And so there are two keys to the courthouse. You could work for one of these insurance companies or corporations, and they have an army of lawyers that they pay hundreds of dollars an hour, or we can take your case and go on faith and fight hard for you and defer any payment unless we win for you. And that's the only way you get justice in the United States.
Yeah, and I tell people all the time, I said, by hiring us, you will never receive a bill from us. If we lose, we just eat what we've invested and we don't get paid for it.
That's right, yeah.
Talk a little bit about creditors. A lot of people may be at home thinking, well, my loved one passed away, but the one that passed away had a mountain of debt, so it wouldn't do me any good to pursue a wrongful death claim because the creditors are going to get it. Is that the case?
That is not the case, and here's the good news. The way our statute is written in the state of Alabama, creditors cannot collect from the wrongful death estate. So they just can do nothing, and those proceeds go to those who deserve them and not to creditors.
Yeah, the money actually flows outside of the estate.
That's
meaning
right.
If the person passed away and they had $1 million in combination of some kind of debt, the heirs don't have to worry about it. The creditor will not touch it.
They do not. Always makes me smile.
All right, we've got about 2 minutes remaining. Time enough for a final thought from the both of you. And if you would please, Sarah Bear, you go first.
My final thought would just be that if you think there's a chance that your loved one died due to negligence or mistreatment or any kind of mistake, it never hurts to consult a lawyer, whether it be Carter's firm, Hollis and Wright, or any firm. Consult with a lawyer so that you can have closure, so that you know what your rights are and whether or not you should proceed or investigate that death any further.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's also important for people to understand, I know it's a difficult time in their life. Obviously, they're going through the grieving process of losing a loved one. But once you get beyond that, it's really important to get to a lawyer quickly. Because as you've mentioned, you have to get an estate set up to be able to properly investigate the matter. Getting the estate takes time. It takes paperwork that has to be filed in the probate court. Evidence can become stale. Witnesses will go away. They'll forget what exactly happened. So it's critically important to get to a lawyer quickly and to allow them to do a proper investigation and to gather all of the records and talk with the witnesses and their time constraints, their deadline, statutes of limitations. If you're perhaps going after a city or a county for the death, then you have to be cognizant of that because there are notices of claims that have to be filed with those entities. So it's real important to get to a lawyer pretty quickly.
Sage advice and a great note to end on. Gentlemen, appreciate the time tonight. Barry, good to see you again.
Always good to see you.
Thank you, David.
All right. Thank you,
Dave.
guys. Appreciate Barry and Carter being here. Always appreciate you being here with us as well. As we wrap things up, a reminder, Hollis Wright, they return every call, text, and email. So even though this show's going off the air, if you get in touch with them, they'll get back with you and make sure that they follow up with that and get you the information that you need. As always, we're so grateful for you joining us each and every Sunday night. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time right here on The Attorneys. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.